Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, confused, or even guilty without really knowing why? As if your energy was stolen in plain sight, and you didn't even notice until much later? Or maybe there's someone in your life who always seems to twist things around. They make you question your own feelings. You go to them vulnerable and come away feeling small, and yet, you still go back. Why? We don't talk enough about the hidden damage people can cause, not with fists or cruelty, but with the silent weapons of manipulation, projection, and unconscious behavior. These aren't just toxic people, they're psychologically dangerous. Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in modern psychology, warned us that the danger doesn't always wear a villain's face. Sometimes it smiles, sometimes it apologizes, sometimes it means well. But behind that exterior is something deeper, an unresolved shadow. And when people refuse to face their inner darkness, they unconsciously throw it onto others. That means if someone hasn't made peace with themselves, they will make war with you, and you won't even realize it's happening until you're already affected. But let's be clear, this isn't about paranoia or cutting everyone off at the first red flag. This is about awareness. It's about psychological self-defense, not in the name of fear, but in the name of freedom. Because the truth is, not everyone around you wants you to be whole. Not everyone claps when you grow. And not everyone who says they love you actually knows how to. Jung didn't hand us a list of bad people to shame or judge. What he offered was far more useful and far more confronting. He gave us a map of the psyche and showed us the kinds of psychological forces that, when left unchecked, damage everyone they touch. And these forces take shape in people, in the personalities we let close to us, in the roles they play in our lives. Sometimes they're strangers, sometimes they're partners, sometimes they're our family. And yet, the moment you learn to see clearly, everything changes. This video is not about blame. It's about reclaiming sovereignty over your own mind. It's about learning to recognize these 6 archetypes, not just in others, but in yourself, because the most dangerous people aren't always outside of you. Sometimes, it's the part of you that still needs approval, that still stays silent, that still attracts pain because it hasn't healed the wound that keeps seeking it. So, if you've ever asked yourself, why do I keep ending up in draining relationships? Why do certain people make me feel worse, even when they mean well? Why do I stay quiet when I want to scream? Why do I keep betraying myself to avoid disappointing others? Then stay with me, because this video may show you something your conscious mind has been trying to protect you from. We're going to walk through 6 types of people Carl Jung would say you must avoid, not because they're evil, but because they are unaware of their own darkness. And when someone's unconscious is running the show, they don't just hurt themselves. They hurt everyone around them, especially those closest to them. And here's the hardest part. 1 or more of these 6 types may not be people in your life right now. They may be patterns within yourself. That's not something to fear, it's something to finally see, because the moment you can name it, you stop being a victim of it. This video is not for the faint of heart. It's for those who are tired of the same emotional cycles, tired of being drained, tired of not understanding why they tolerate what they do, and ready not to cut people off out of anger, but to rise above unconscious dynamics out of truth. If that's you, then you're exactly where you need to be. Because once we shine a light on these 6 dangerous types, you'll never see people, or yourself, the same way again. Let's start with the foundation, the psychological blueprint behind all of this. To understand why people become dangerous to our well-being, we first need to understand how they become disconnected from their own. And to do that, we have to go into the world of the persona and the shadow, 2 of Jung's most profound and life-changing ideas. Let's go deeper. To understand the 6 dangerous people Carl Jung warned us about, we need to step into the architecture of the human psyche. Jung believed that each of us walks through life wearing a mask. He called this mask the persona, the version of ourselves we show to the world. It's not necessarily fake, It's adaptive. It's how we function in society, at work, in relationships. It's the you you've curated over time, the polite one, the agreeable one, the competent, lovable, social self. But here's the problem. The more we over-identify with this persona, the more we convince ourselves that it is who we truly are, the more we disconnect from what's hidden underneath. That hidden part? Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is everything we repress, deny, or avoid in ourselves. It's not just darkness in a moral sense, it's also vulnerability, fear, rage, insecurity, neediness, jealousy. Traits that don't fit into the nice, clean image of who we think we should be. So we push them down. We pretend they're not there. We bury them under the floorboards of the psyche. But here's where things get dangerous. What we suppress internally will eventually seek expression externally. If we don't face our shadow, it doesn't go away. It festers. And eventually, it gets projected onto others, friends, partners, even strangers. Instead of owning our inner pain, we unconsciously assign it to someone else. This is the root of so much human dysfunction, and it's the invisible engine behind the 6 dangerous people we'll be exploring. These individuals haven't made contact with their shadow. They haven't faced the fear, shame, or pain inside them, so it spills out sideways. Their relationships become battlegrounds, their emotions become weapons, and anyone close to them becomes a target. Let's break down the mechanics of projection, because this is critical to understand. When someone is disconnected from their own inner wounds, their unconscious mind searches for mirrors, people who carry traits they don't want to acknowledge in themselves. For example, a man who represses his vulnerability may mock others for being too sensitive. A woman who's secretly envious may accuse others of being selfish or attention-seeking. Someone ashamed of their own ambition might label others as egotistical or greedy. Do you see what's happening here? They're not reacting to you. They're reacting to a disowned part of themselves. And until they become aware of this projection, they remain hostage to it, and so do the people around them. This is where Jung's psychology becomes brutally honest. You are either doing the inner work, or you are unconsciously harming others. And this is true for you, for me, and for every single person we meet. Now, let's look at the chain reaction this creates. When someone is deeply identified with their persona, they fear anything that threatens it. So, when they see someone who is authentic, emotionally grounded, or unafraid to speak hard truths, it creates discomfort. Why? Because that authenticity confronts them with their own inauthenticity. This is why people sometimes hate you for being real. It's not you they're resisting, it's the part of themselves they've exiled. And you're the living, breathing reminder of it. And this leads us to a painful but powerful truth. Unconscious people weaponize relationships to protect their illusions. They will guilt you for setting boundaries. They will shame you for expressing anger. They will withdraw love when you speak your truth. They will confuse your clarity for cruelty, and unless you understand the mechanics of the psyche, you'll take it personally. You'll internalize it. You'll twist yourself into knots trying to fix what isn't yours to carry. You'll betray yourself in the name of keeping the peace. This is how trauma replicates. Not in big explosions, but in subtle exchanges. In conversations where you leave feeling smaller. In dynamics where love is conditional. In environments where your authenticity is punished. But here's the turning point. Once you see it, you can stop it. You can begin to spot the unconscious games, those strange gut-level reactions you feel around certain people, that clenching in your stomach, the tension in your jaw, that voice in your mind whispering, "Something isn't right here." Jung called this shadow activation. It's when someone else's energy touches a hidden part of your shadow, or when your light touches theirs. And if you don't have language for what's happening, you'll either shut down or explode. Or worse, stay in the cycle, believing you're the problem. But let's be clear. Just because someone is unconscious doesn't make them evil. The 6 dangerous types we'll explore aren't necessarily malicious. In many cases, they're deeply wounded. But Jung would say this: people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that anything often includes emotional sabotage, psychological projection, guilt-tripping, spiritual bypassing, and more. Now, here's where it gets even deeper. Some of the people who activate your shadow the most, who make you angry, defensive, or afraid, aren't your enemies. They're your teachers. They're revealing parts of yourself you haven't yet claimed. Because your shadow doesn't just contain pain, it also contains power. Repressed anger becomes a lack of boundaries. Repressed desire becomes chronic indecision. Repressed truth becomes people-pleasing. But when you integrate those parts, you become whole. So when we talk about avoiding these 6 types, we're not saying run away out of fear. We're saying recognize the patterns so that you can choose awareness over reaction. Because the truth is, if you don't understand this psychological framework, you will either fall under the spell of these people, or you will become one of them. So, the path forward is twofold. 1. Learn to identify these archetypes in others, so you can protect your peace. 2. Learn to identify them in yourself, so you can reclaim your power. Because real growth isn't about blaming people for their shadows, it's about choosing to stop dancing with dysfunction. And the first step is naming it. Now that we've laid the psychological foundation, it's time to get specific. In the next section, we're going to walk through the 6 dangerous people Carl Jung warned us about, how they show up, how they affect you, and why they must be either healed or avoided. And trust me, once you recognize them, you'll see them everywhere. Let's begin. Now that we've built the psychological foundation, persona, shadow, projection, it's time to confront what happens when we ignore these forces in the people around us, and in ourselves. Because the truth is, the 6 dangerous people Jung would warn us about are not dangerous because they're bad. They're dangerous because they're unconscious. And when unconsciousness is left unchecked, it becomes a silent predator. You don't see it coming, you don't hear the growl. But one day, you wake up, and parts of you are gone. Your confidence, your sense of reality, your boundaries, your energy, your self-trust. So, let's dive in, starting with the first type. 1. The manipulative empath. This is the person who appears deeply caring, sensitive, intuitive, even healing. But beneath the surface, their identity is built on being needed. Their love is conditional. Their help always comes with a hook, and they read your pain, yes, but they use it. They know how to say the right thing, but what they want in return is emotional dependency. They don't want to empower you. They want you to need them. Jung would say this is someone who's repressed their own inner child, the part that feels helpless, unseen, and now controls others to avoid feeling it again. If you're close to this person, here's what happens. You'll confuse guilt for love. You'll feel indebted to someone who keeps you weak. You'll apologize for hurting their feelings, even when you were the one in pain. This person will wrap control in the disguise of compassion, and over time, you'll lose your ability to discern what's real, too. The righteous victim. This one is tricky. They seem morally pure. They're always being wronged. By the system, by their family, by the world. They wear suffering like a badge of honor. But their victimhood is not about healing. It's about power. It gives them the right to manipulate through guilt, to demand special treatment, to reject accountability. In Jungian terms, this is someone deeply identified with their persona of moral innocence. Their shadow, filled with rage, entitlement, and judgment, is completely unconscious. So, it leaks out in toxic ways. If you stay close to this person, you'll start to doubt your right to set boundaries. You'll walk on eggshells, you'll over-explain. You'll constantly try to prove that you're not the bad guy. And eventually, you'll start to believe their pain is your fault. 3. The passive-aggressive shadow holder. This is the person who doesn't confront directly. They can't. Their persona is built on being nice. But that doesn't mean they're harmless. Their aggression slips out sideways, through sarcasm, forgetfulness, backhanded compliments, subtle sabotage. They don't stab you in the front. They let you bleed out emotionally, one drop at a time. Jung warned that when anger is repressed, it becomes poisonous. This person's shadow contains rage they cannot accept. So it gets projected onto you. You'll start to question whether you're too sensitive. You'll feel confused after conversations. You'll sense hostility but won't be able to name it. Over time, you'll become emotionally hypervigilant and your self-trust will erode. 4. The image worshiper. This one is common in families, leadership, even spirituality. It's the person obsessed with maintaining appearances. Their entire identity is built on how they're perceived. Being respectable. Being admired. Their persona is everything. Their shadow? Filled with insecurity, shame, and self-hatred. But because they can't look at that, they will shame you for being honest about your flaws. This person cannot handle vulnerability. Not yours, not theirs. If you express it, they'll call you weak, dramatic, ungrateful. They need you to reflect their ideal image, and if you don't, you'll be cast out or punished. Around this person, you'll feel fake. You'll hide parts of yourself. You'll suppress your emotions to protect their comfort, and slowly, your authenticity dies. 5. The charismatic narcissist. This one is dangerous not because of what they show, but because of what they hide. They're charming, confident, persuasive. They make you feel seen, chosen, special. But their attention is not love. It's possession. Their interest is not connection. It's control. Jung said that when the ego is inflated, when someone believes they are above others, they stop evolving. The shadow becomes completely disowned, and when that happens, the person becomes incapable of true intimacy. Their love turns cold when you stop performing. Their admiration turns cruel when you stop agreeing. And worst of all, they make you doubt your worth when they discard you, because their manipulation was so subtle, so emotionally seductive. This is the person who doesn't hit you. They haunt you. Long after they're gone, their voice lives in your head. 6. The spiritual bypasser. This person uses wisdom to avoid wounds. They speak of peace, love, and detachment, but it's not real. It's a persona they've built to escape the discomfort of being human. They'll shame you for being angry. They'll quote scripture when you're grieving. They'll say everything happens for a reason when you're just trying to process your pain. And here's the thing, they believe they're helping, but what they're really doing is rejecting their shadow and yours. They're uncomfortable with depth, discomfort, and darkness, so they gaslight others into positivity. In relationships, this is devastating. Your very real emotions are invalidated. You'll start to feel broken for feeling anything at all. You'll try to fix yourself so you can be more enlightened. But the result isn't healing, it's spiritual self-abandonment. Now, why does this matter? Because every time you stay entangled with one of these types without awareness, you teach your nervous system that this is normal. You teach your psyche that truth must be sacrificed for connection, that safety comes from pleasing, that survival requires self-betrayal, and over time, you lose your voice. You shrink your spirit. You mistake loyalty for love. You forget who you were before they got in your head. This is the slow death of the authentic self. It doesn't come from one traumatic blow. It comes from 1,000 small compromises. And if this sounds familiar, I want you to know something. You are not weak for being affected. You are not broken for not seeing it sooner. You are not naive for wanting to believe the best in people. You were simply not taught how to protect your inner world. Until now. Because here's what Jung wanted us to remember. You are not responsible for other people's shadows, but you are responsible for not letting them merge with yours. So, what now? How do we free ourselves from these dynamics? How do we not just avoid the dangerous people, but stop being drawn to them? How do we heal the parts of ourselves that let these patterns continue? That's exactly what we're going to explore in the next section. Because the real transformation doesn't happen by pointing fingers, It happens when we stop playing the unconscious game altogether. Let's move forward from awareness to integration. So, now that the mirror has been held up, now that you've seen the faces of these 6 dangerous psychological profiles, what do you do with that awareness? Because awareness is only the beginning. True transformation happens when you stop reacting and start integrating. When you stop fighting battles outside of yourself and begin the deeper work within. Carl Jung never told us to run from danger. He told us to understand it, to make the unconscious conscious, to take back the parts of ourselves we've projected, rejected, or repressed. Why? Because that's where our power has been hiding. So let's talk about how to reclaim it. Let's talk about how to be someone who is no longer manipulated, no longer drained, no longer hijacked by emotional patterns or psychological games. Someone who doesn't just avoid dangerous people, but radiates such clarity that those people can't stay close. This is not about controlling others. This is about becoming unshakable in yourself. It starts with one commitment. 1. Know your own shadow before naming anyone else's. This is the foundation of all psychological integrity. If you skip this step, you're not healing. You're just projecting from a different pedestal. You cannot spot manipulation, guilt-tripping, or bypassing in others unless you've seen how it lives in you too. Ask yourself, where do I play the victim to avoid accountability? Where do I suppress my anger, then punish people with silence? Where do I use kindness as a mask for control? This isn't about self-judgment, it's about radical self-honesty. Until you know the contours of your own shadow, you will be seduced by others who reflect it. You'll either be attracted to their traits or try to rescue them from their dysfunction. That's why step 1 is the hardest, but also the most freeing. Because when you meet your own shadow with compassion, you stop needing to correct, fix, or save anyone else. You start walking through the world with discernment instead of reactivity. Which brings us to step 2. 2. Develop shadow discernment. This is your psychological immune system. Shadow discernment means learning to feel the difference between what's yours and what's not. When someone guilt-trips you, do you immediately feel the urge to explain yourself? When someone withdraws love or approval, do you go into panic mode? When someone's energy confuses, do you assume it's your fault? These are the signs that your boundaries are still fused with survival. Discernment is the ability to pause and ask, is this mine to carry, or is this a projection? It's not about confrontation. It's not about drama. It's about inner clarity. And here's a secret. When you're deeply anchored in your truth, manipulators get bored. Passive-aggressives disengage. Bypassers move on. Because your energy is no longer a fertile ground for their games. You're no longer reactive. You're responsive. And that's where your power lives. Now, let's talk about how to anchor that power in your daily life. 3. Set energetic boundaries, not just verbal ones. Most people think boundaries are just words. Don't talk to me like that. I need space. That's not okay. And yes, those are important. But the most powerful boundaries aren't spoken. They're embodied. It's the energy of someone who is self-owned. Someone who doesn't abandon themselves to avoid tension. Someone who no longer negotiates their reality just to keep the peace. Think of it like this. Verbal boundaries are fences. Energetic boundaries are walls of clarity. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to defend yourself endlessly. You know who you are, and that knowing becomes your filter. And when you start living from that place, you stop attracting people who thrive on confusion. But this doesn't mean you won't feel lonely. Which brings us to step 4. 4. Be willing to walk alone for a while. Here's the truth no one wants to admit. As you begin to heal, people will leave. Not always dramatically, often subtly, gradually. You'll reach out less, they'll stop responding. You'll sense the distance. And a part of you will ache. That's okay. Because people who depended on your unconsciousness cannot survive your awareness. Those who were drawn to your people-pleasing will vanish when you start saying no. Those who fed off your emotional labor will look for someone easier to control. Let them go. This phase is painful, but it's not punishment. It's purification. And the more you honor your own presence, the more you'll begin attracting people who are whole, not hungry. People who mirror your clarity, not your wounds. But you must be willing to endure the space in between. That sacred silence between the old and the new. And that's where step 5 becomes essential. 5. Create a daily practice of self-reconnection, because no transformation sticks without consistency. This is not about adding more things to your to-do list, it's about prioritizing inner alignment. That can mean journaling about emotional triggers and projections. Doing 5 minutes of conscious breathing when you feel hijacked. Speaking affirmations rooted in truth, not fantasy. I trust my perception. I don't need to explain myself to be valid. It's safe to be clear. Every time you choose awareness over reactivity, you're rewiring your nervous system. You're reminding your body that love doesn't require abandonment, that peace doesn't require shrinking, that connection doesn't require confusion. And when this becomes your baseline, you don't just avoid dangerous people, you become immune to their pull. So let's zoom out now. The real solution is not about identifying bad people and cutting them off forever. It's about becoming so deeply connected to your inner truth that the old dynamics simply lose their gravity. You don't chase, you don't fight, you don't explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You walk, you align, you evolve. Because at the end of the day, the most powerful protection you have is not distance, it's discernment. And here's the beautiful irony. The more you own your own shadow, the less you are harmed by other people's. You stop personalizing their projections. You stop internalizing their shame. You stop mistaking dysfunction for destiny. You begin to live from the inside out, not the outside in. And in that shift, you find the very thing those dangerous people were stealing from you, your sovereignty. Now that we've uncovered the path to true protection, not through fear, but through self-possession, it's time to land this journey with one final reflection. In the next and final section, we'll recap everything we've learned and leave you with a powerful call to action that could change the way you relate to yourself and the world around you, starting today. Let's finish strong. If you've made it to this point, it means something inside you is awake. Not just curious, not just entertained, but ready to confront what's been hiding in plain sight. In the people you've trusted, in the patterns you've repeated, and maybe even in yourself. Let's take a breath and recap the journey we've just walked together. We started by exploring the fundamental Jungian idea that everyone wears a persona and everyone carries a shadow, that what we reject in ourselves gets projected onto others, and that some people, when they remain unconscious, become dangerous not because they are evil, but because they are unaware of the power they wield. Then we met the 6 types of people Jung would caution you to avoid. The manipulative empath, whose kindness comes with chains. The righteous victim, who uses suffering as a shield from accountability. The passive-aggressive shadow holder, who poisons connection through indirect hostility. The image worshiper, who demands perfection and punishes authenticity. The charismatic narcissist, who seduces, controls, then discards. And the spiritual bypasser, who masks avoidance in the language of enlightenment. We saw how these people operate, and how if we're not conscious, we invite them into our most sacred spaces, our minds, our hearts, our homes. But awareness without action is just intellectual decoration. So we moved deeper to the real solution: shadow work, discernment, energetic boundaries, radical self-honesty, the courage to walk alone if needed, and the discipline to return to your truth daily. Because the goal isn't to live in fear of dangerous people. The goal is to become so whole, so clear, so awake, that the dangerous ones can no longer find a door into your psyche. That is Jung's legacy. Not fear, but freedom. Not paranoia, but power through awareness. So now, I turn the mirror to you. What part of today's message hit you the hardest? What truth did you need to hear, but were afraid to admit? Drop it in the comments. Yes, I'm asking you to speak it out loud. Because your honesty might be the mirror someone else needs to finally wake up. And if you're ready to go even deeper, don't stop here. The next video in this series takes you into the shadow within yourself, how to meet it, heal it, and stop it from running your life in silence. If this video was a mirror, the next is a door. Click it, watch it, and keep walking the path Jung pointed toward, not away from darkness, but through it. Because that's where your wholeness lives. You're not alone. You're just ahead, and the world needs more people willing to see clearly before it's too late. See you in the next one.